Welcome back to Stalker. It is the 8th of... No, it isn't.
It's the 7th, Bob.
No, can I say it's the 8th month is what I meant to say. I just do it different.
Okay.
It's the 8th month. It's the 7th day of the year 2014. And I am Bob Green, broadcasting from the beautiful shores of Lake Superior. Eric Maximilian Hedrick is always in the Central Coast region of California. We are very pleased to welcome to this broadcast once again Mr. Richard Gage AIA. Good evening, sir.
Well, good evening. I'm delighted to be here with both of you.
Well, we have a prepared, wonderful introduction, and I would be remiss and receive an angry email if I did not do this. So revisiting us here at New Stalker tonight, we have San Francisco Bay Area architect Richard Gage AIA, member of the American Institute of Architects and founder of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Mr. Gage has been an architect for over 24 years and has worked on most types of building construction, including numerous fireproof steel-framed buildings. He became interested in researching the destruction of the World Trade Center high-rises. Hang in there, Richard. After hearing the startling conclusions of a reluctant 9/11 researcher David Ray Griffin on the radio show in 2006, which launched his own unyielding quest for the truth about 9/11. AE 9/11 Truth now numbers more than 2,000 architects and engineers demanding... what is the number right now, Richard?
We have more than 2,200 architects and engineers.
That is amazing. Demanding a new investigation into the destruction of all three World Trade Center high-rise buildings on September 11th. On Friday, August 1st, Richard was asked to appear as a guest on C-SPAN, an unprecedented move on the part of the mass media concerning a new look at 9/11. Architects and Engineers from 9/11 Truth is also launching a new campaign to raise money for another billboard outside the New York Times building. Do you think they'll see it? I mean, they don't see news in front of their face, but maybe they'll see it. Throughout September, this time to set in motion questions showing that the Twin Towers were also brought down by explosives. Welcome to the show, Mr. Gage.
Thank you, Bob and Eric. Really, it's an honor to be here with you.
Now, there's one issue, before we get into the C-SPAN interview, there's one issue that we may have touched on this with you before, Mr. Gage, but I think it's worth repeating. Eric and I had as a guest on this broadcast, and he actually approached us about being on the show, a gentleman by the name of Bill Dean from CBS News. He was from CBS News headquarters in New York City. He was an assignment editor for CBS News during the events of September 11th, 2001. And off air, we were having a conversation with him about 9/11, and we brought up Building 7. And Mr. Gage, he asked us what Building 7 was. He had no idea about Building 7.
Wow. And he was in Manhattan.
He was there.
Yeah. He was in Manhattan, and he was the reporter would not go out to cover a story unless Mr. Dean sent him to cover that story. And he, just less than a year ago, when we interviewed him, was not aware of Building 7.
Wow. Maybe we should remind your listeners what Building 7 is, in case some of them, like 80% of the architects in the world, are completely unaware of this building, because the news media didn't report it. So I would love to introduce it to your listening audience at this time.
Well, as you, Mr. Gage, as you pointed out in your C-SPAN interview, there were two media outlets that did report the building, but they reported it before it collapsed, and that was CNN and the BBC.
Yes. Well, first things first, this is a 47-story skyscraper, easily the tallest skyscraper in most of our states. And it is part of the World Trade Center and about a football field in length away from the North Tower. The two towers fell or were destroyed that morning, and we'll get to them. But this third tower at 5:20 in the afternoon comes crashing down after witnesses hear explosions, and it falls in exactly 7 seconds from top to bottom. This is incredible because that rate is identified by physicists, actually, as free fall acceleration. So it fell as fast as a bowling ball would fall straight down uniformly into its own footprint at an incredible speed, and it's completely destroyed the structural system is completely destroyed. 40,000 tons of structural steel, one beam from another mostly. And this is incredible. I mean, okay, so you can see this if your listeners haven't seen it yet on our website, which is ae911truth.org. That's ae911truth.org. It falls in the exact manner of a classic controlled demolition, just like the old hotels in Las Vegas. So when people see it, finally, most people are completely unaware of it, are architects and engineers. And this is the third worst structural failure in modern history. And they're completely unaware of it. That's absolutely an incredible state of being. I mean, circumstance. It should have an investigation, something like the space shuttle. I mean, it is a national disaster, and yet it's been censored by the media. Only played like 3 times in the national media. Absolutely incredible. Why? Because it's obviously a controlled demolition, and the official story from NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, tells us that this was due to, quote, normal office fires, unquote. Now, office fires, normal or not, have never taken down a high-rise ever before. And here on 9/11, we have not 2, but 3 high-rises. So we've got to look at the evidence in the rubble pile, and of course what we find is evidence of thermite incendiaries, liquid molten iron flowing like lava, the first responders described.
Could I play devil's advocate, Mr. Gage, with you right now, though, since you're bringing up thermite?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pretend that I'm a C-SPAN host. Well, Mr. Gage, you're aware that according to NIST, it would take 0.13 pounds of thermite per 1 pound of structural steel to cause the type of destruction that you're presenting to us here.
Well, that's an interesting calculation there. Thermite won't even work unless it's actually packed in cutter charges, shaped charges that are designed to emit, in the case of the patented cutter charges that they do have now and had before 9/11, emit molten iron in milliseconds, cutting through structural steel actually much more effectively than high-energy explosives like C4 and RDX, which are normally used in controlled demolitions, but which give loud bangs and bright flashes. So in a deceptive controlled demolition, one would be looking for an alternative method. And I guess every crime has its signature, this one being tons of liquid molten metal. And liquid molten metal iron microspheres throughout all the World Trade Center dust, comprising up to 6% of some samples that have no possible reason for being there other than the use of thermite.
And in the interview on C-SPAN, boy, there was so much. Where do you start? But and essentially, and not disparaging on the host at all, but his research, it seems, appeared to be just looking at a few of the question and answers from the NIST report. But you highlighted the fact that FEMA had actually come out and said that there was molten iron, but that the FEMA report was that in 2000, I believe. 2004, that was kind of scrapped, and then NIST took over. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, I think it was 2002. Boy, am I confused now? 2002 or 2004 FEMA report came out. And, yeah, they scrapped Appendix C, which was the forensic analysis of the steel, of all things, presumably because it had the evidence of thermite. The author of this report, Jonathan Barnett, a fire protection engineer, actually said the ends of the steel beams were partially evaporated.
Wow.
You don't get that in normal office fires. You don't even get that, by the way, with jet fuel, which, of course, Building 7 was not hit by an airplane. How do you get molten iron? It's an incendiary thermite. It issues molten iron at 4,500 degrees. It cuts through steel like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah, and there was evidence of thermite, which is essentially iron oxide and aluminum oxide. There was evidence of thermite in the dust in the area as well.
Can I ask one question?
Well,
I've heard,
that is true, and we should come back to that. That's a very important point later.
what is there such a thing, and this is only because I've seen it on some other documentaries, nanothermite. Is there such a thing as that? And if so, what's the difference between that and regular thermite?
Yeah, that's what I forget who's Bob and who's Eric. Sorry,
I'm Bob.
That's Bob. Bob was saying Bob has the deep, sexy voice. Okay.
Jeez.
Bob was saying that he was referring to a small team of scientists led by Niels Harrit in Copenhagen, international group, who found in all four of their independently collected samples over different time frames by different people in New York, and that were sent to them, they found small red-gray chips. These are composed of extremely tiny particles of iron oxide and aluminum powder, and they are built from the atomic scale up, extremely sophisticated nanothermite. This has been documented by Lawrence Livermore Lab and Los Alamos Lab, and it is very, very special stuff. It is a high-grade, actually, it's an incendiary that's designed to be more explosive. And so it should not be found in all the World Trade Center dust samples. This has, of course, been documented in a 24-page peer-reviewed paper in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal. And it stands uncontested. No one has put forth their own peer-reviewed paper to challenge these results. It is an indictment against the official story.
I'd like to play a quick little audio clip, and I want to preface it with this from the C-SPAN interview. The host got pretty technical that an explosion should be a boom and not a boom. That, from NIST, they're saying that what people reported they heard were not explosions because they weren't loud enough. I want to play a clip from a New York City firefighter, and I apologize. You have to remember the heat of the moment. There may be some language issues here.
We were in the lobby gathering to go up and start doing a search on the upper floors. So, as we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion, and everybody just started running for the door. Everybody was trapped. Eventually, when the dust lifted, I saw some light and started screaming for everybody to go out towards the light. I managed to get Tyrone out and a couple other guys that have already gone over to Jersey City via a boat. It was fucked. It was unbelievable in there. This guy's still trapped. We couldn't get to him.
And that's part of a longer clip where there's about 4 other firemen that one at a time say the same thing over and over again, explosion. I would guess then, Mr. Gage, that NIST thinks that New York City firefighters don't know what explosions sound like?
Yeah, that's actually what they're saying. They're implying. They don't call them liars outright, but they do pull the rug out from under their testimony. In fact, 118 first responders are on record, oral record, recorded as testifying to these explosions, as well as being blown around in the towers, the Twin Towers. And this quote, he's referring to the Twin Towers, not Building 7. But there are also several witnesses hearing explosions, including Kevin McPadden, who heard a countdown on a radio held in the hands of a Red Cross worker. And he heard 3, 2, 1, and then he said you heard this explosion, the ground rumbling like you had to grab onto something. He and 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 there's a few more. I can't remember the names. They're in our DVD called 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. And here we have 43 of these technical and building professionals, firefighters, controlled demolitions experts, physicists, fire engineering experts, fire protection engineers, all testifying here. It's an incredible outlay. In fact, it can be seen on our website, ae911truth.org.
I don't want to.
But regarding NIST, sorry, they did say if Building 7 was a controlled demolition, you'd have a loud boom that you'd hear for miles. Well, of course, all the evidence that we're talking about relates to incendiaries, which do have noise. There were explosions heard, but they're not the loud bang associated with controlled demolitions. So it's disingenuous for NIST to attack our thesis based on the fact that there would have been a loud boom when they know we're talking about thermite incendiaries, and that's what their own evidence from the FEMA report, which they excluded from their final report, discussed.
I don't want to go outside your line of expertise. I think we can keep this within that. I'm going to be working to a little bit of a broader point, something that we touched on a little bit earlier. If you look at the video of Building 7 before the collapse, I'm going to assume, and you can answer, that there's nothing that you, as an expert in structural engineering and design, there's nothing that you would see from the exterior of that building that would make you think that it's about to collapse at free fall speed right before you. Looking at the building, you don't see anything structurally wrong with the building that would make you think it's going to collapse?
No. In fact, sorry, I had a distraction. We're talking about Building 7 or the Twin
talking
Towers?
about Building 7. The video, obviously, of it going down. Looking at the building before the building starts to come down, before the roof starts to go and the building falls. Do you see anything on that building that would tell you that that building is about to collapse?
Right. No, we don't. In fact, NIST said that there were some beams, some structural elements that came off of the North Tower and hit the side of of Building 7. At first, they grossly exaggerated it and said that a quarter of the building was scooped out, but that was found to not be true at all. And they actually said what damage there was was not a part of the initiation of collapse at all, because it collapsed from the other side, the northeast side. And so, no, but there was a story that they fed to the fire department that said there's structural damage. That's why we're not fighting the fire. And there's some sprinklers that were out. Of course, somebody had put them on a test mode, which was very interesting, the morning of 9/11.
So from the exterior, there's nothing that would tell even an expert in the field that the building's about to fall. Because they said there was some structural damage and an issue with the sprinkler system, no one went in to fight the fire, so no one would have been up on the 12th floor and seen something that showed that one of the columns was about to give. My point in all that is, then there is no plausible explanation whatsoever for the BBC or CNN having any indication that the building might fall, for them to say, well, we're correct. Sorry, we just said it early. They had no indication that building would fall until it fell.
That's correct. In fact, no high-rises ever collapsed due to fire. So what possible reason would they have not to go up there, other than the fact that the Twin Towers did or were destroyed that morning? So they had something to be nervous about to that extent, and so I won't second guess them. They lost 340 firefighters that morning, so there's plenty of reason to be nervous, but there's no structural damage. I mean, what they say is somebody did a transit and found that the side of the building was out of square, but nobody can find the person who did that or said that. So It's just they're just trying to get everybody away from it for like 6 blocks because they knew that it was coming down. In fact, you say CNN, and they announced it at 10:45. They said a fireman came by and said a 50-story building went down, and the canyons are full of smoke and debris. There was no other, and that was that morning, right? After the Twin Towers came down. Well, if there was if it did come down at that time, Building 7, we wouldn't even had videos of it. It would be completely obscured by the massive dust cloud that was created when the Twin Towers came down. So we don't buy that at all. We think that maybe it was supposed to come down at that time, which is perhaps why that announcement was made, and that the mysterious construction workers that were walking away from Building 7 in the afternoon, hearing an explosion over their shoulder, and looking back, and then looking straight into the CNN camera and saying, that building's about to blow up. See that building? It's about to blow up. Flame and debris coming down. They're not talking about the building's in danger because of fire, structural danger. They're saying the building's about to blow up. They have foreknowledge. These are probably the guys that, we're guessing, put explosives in the building.
I guess one clue would be a steel beam hitting Building 7 1,000 feet away from the North Tower. Would that, I mean, something would have caused that to have that type of trajectory, right?
Yes, the towers had an incredible set of behavior. In the North Tower itself, we're told that the upper 15-story block above the point of jet plane impacts, that it drove the rest of the building down. But that's not what we see at all in any of the videos. It itself is telescoping in on itself, much like Building 7, actually, in the first 4 seconds of the tower's destruction. And after that, and this is after the explosions, like a belt, the first responders described, all the way around the building, like a belt, all these explosions, crack, crack, crack. They're on record as talking about. But then additional explosions are hurling 4-ton perimeter structural steel sections laterally, outside the building, laterally, 60 miles an hour trajectory like a cannonball, landing 600 feet in every direction. So this is incredible, complete shattering of the structural steel of the Twin Towers from top to bottom in just 12 seconds, each of them. And that's almost free fall acceleration. It's 2/3 of it. It's accelerating straight down through the strongest path, which would be it should have tipped over if it was going to fall. Not straight down through the path of greatest resistance, the 100,000 tons of structural steel supporting these buildings. It's absolutely ludicrous.
We're going to have to put you on pause, Mr. Gage, for just a little bit. We're at the top of the hour. When we come back, we're going to talk about building floors that should have looked like pancakes. I used that in a conversation this week, talking to a friend. Said, well, my good friend Richard Gage AIA says those floors should have been stacked like pancakes. And that wasn't the case. We'll be right back. This is News Stalker. Good evening once again. Welcome back to hour number 2 of News Stalker. It is the 7th. I've decided to say the date the way everybody wants me to. It's the 7th of August, 2014. Bob Green broadcasting from the beautiful shores of Lake Superior. Eric Maximilian Hedrick broadcasting from the Central Coast region of California. And joining us on the broadcast tonight once again is Richard Gage AIA, founding member of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Welcome back, Mr. Gage. We have a question from the chat room. How much time would it take to set up a controlled demolition of this magnitude?
Well, it would certainly take a group of at least a dozen operatives several months. It's a huge job. We do, interestingly enough, know that there was the largest elevator modernization in history going on the 9 months prior to 9/11. It was actually documented in Elevator World in March of 2001. And 85 employees of Ace Elevator who had this contract were in the towers at the time the planes hit them. And they fled. These are people who are well trained to rescue survivors and help the firemen rescue them. And it was actually quite a scandal that USA Today documented in the paper in October that they fled. So this is very interesting. We certainly want an investigation of Ace Elevator and the security company, of course, under whose eyes would have had to have been brought many tons of very high-tech nanothermite and probably high-energy explosives as well.
You know, if a terrorist event happens on the shores of the United States of America, just because it's called a terrorist attack does not mean that it is not a crime. And you highlight in the video how this is a criminal investigation. This was a mass murder of just a huge magnitude. Why do you think that the steel was taken so quickly from the site and rushed off to China for recycling?
Well, we do know that that's the case. And there's some speculation as to who gave those orders. FEMA was involved. Giuliani, the mayor, was involved. I can only imagine that the rush to send the scientific forensic evidence, the steel, the evidence in a crime scene was shipped off so rapidly. 400 truckloads a day sent out of there. Could have been put in a landfill, all of it, but it was put on barges, as you mentioned, to China and India for recycling. So we've got to have an investigation. I can only speculate about their motive. It stinks of a cover-up.
Well, it sounds like the sanitization of a crime scene, and that alone would begin an investigation in almost any other circumstance.
Yes.
Not to mention, you also mentioned in your interview about how there are all these witnesses who really weren't given their moment to tell their story. The witnesses of explosions, the witnesses of hearing countdowns, and all the rest. Again, a criminal investigation certainly should have involved interviewing and archiving the interviews of every possible witness.
Yeah, in fact, it was suppressed by the city. All of these, Thomas von Essen, the fire commissioner, actually recorded these 500 first responders, and they were suppressed. And we found out in August of 2005 when the New York State of Appeals forced the city to release these tapes to the New York Times, who was suing them, wherein we finally learn about these 118 first responders talking about explosions. Now, guess of them and hundreds more witnesses talking about explosions. Guess how many of those accounts of explosions appear in the final report for the Twin Towers or Building 7?
I'm going to say it's a very small number.
0. That's the smallest you can get.
That's the smallest.
Yeah, that stinks of a cover-up as well, of course.
Now, have you? I know you focus on the Twin Towers and on Building 7, but have you taken a look at the structural damage to the Pentagon?
I myself have not looked deeply into that. There are so many theories within the 9/11 truth movement about what happened at the Pentagon that it's kind of it's also a rat's nest of disinformation, misinformation, and lack of information. We all agree on one thing: nothing should have hit the Pentagon, or caused its destruction. I mean, this is the most highly defended building in the world. So, with surface-to-air missiles, and they haven't released the tapes that would show exactly what did or didn't hit the Pentagon. So it reeks of a cover-up as well. But others have researched that, including David Ray Griffin, who's written.
I want to echo something that one of the callers to C-SPAN said about you. He was a man who had called up and said he signed up for the military after September 11th, and that he nearly lost his life in, I believe, Iraq. And he called you an American hero. I certainly would say that it's the ultimate form of patriotism to question all of this. We have fought 2 wars. We lost about 6,000 of our own and about 1 million people in the Middle East. We've lost nearly all of our freedoms because I'm on the shores of Lake Superior. I'm in the largest inland seaport in the world, which means that we have a lot of security here. I essentially live in a Constitution-free zone because of September 11th. There are many areas where I travel every day that are not secure, not fenced in, but you can be stopped and searched at any time. And this is all because of these events that we have not been told the truth about.
That's true. 9/11 precipitated legislation, which our own elected representatives betrayed us. They gave away our freedoms, where today any of us can be arrested without charge, without a right to a trial, without a right to a lawyer. And even be kept indefinitely, and even tortured, actually, and we can be assassinated. American citizens today can be assassinated by drones or whatever. It's not. They don't even have to tell us. This all goes back to 9/11, the Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act, the National Defense Authorization Act. It's absolute travesty, and so it makes you wonder. In addition to the 2 wars, which in Afghanistan and Iraq, which we know Iraq was not for oil. It was for oil, apparently by most researchers, because it wasn't for. We didn't invade because of weapons of mass destruction or ties between Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. And the researchers who look at Afghanistan cite massive investment there in securing the opium trade, which the Taliban had shut off, choking off 90% of the world's supply of opium. So that should be researched as well. By all your listeners. It's a fascinating story, and we've lost 6,000 soldiers, and 1 million people in the Middle East have died as a result of 9/11. If there's any question about what happened on 9/11, then we've got to get to the root of it, due to everything that has happened because of and since 9/11. That it used 9/11 as its raison d'etre.
And I think we need to go to the prelude of 9/11, and that would have been September 10th, 2001, when Donald Rumsfeld announced that there was $2.3 trillion unaccounted for dollars in the Pentagon budget, and for the first time ever, one federal agency was asking for other federal agencies to assist because he was just bewildered, befuddled that they could somehow be missing $2.3 trillion in his press conference. And he went on and on about how they were going to rectify this and how they were going to get to the bottom of this. That was a press conference that was held September 10th, 2001. Not only did no one ever look into what happened to the $2.3 trillion missing dollars, we spent another $2 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan.
And $4.5 trillion on the global war on terror.
Has there been any thought doing an AE 9/11 official investigation guide to 9/11, just like the bogus 9/11 Commission report? Has there been any thought of maybe AE 9/11 Truth putting out a publication in book form to basically highlight the inaccuracies in that publication?
Well, we've certainly issued many articles on the subject, putting them into a book, and we have our DVD, of course, too. I think that's a great idea. We certainly thought about it. It just takes a lot of work, and I've been just so busy running around doing the presentations and interviews and actions that we support all around the planet. It is a lot of busyness. I mean, we only have 2 employees at AE 9/11 Truth, a lot of volunteers, but it's just not enough people doing enough things. We certainly could use the support of your listeners in terms of efforts and assistance at AE 9/11 Truth, and of course financial support, because we're not supported by the Pew Charitable Trust or the other,
or the Clinton Foundation, or
yes, the Rockefeller Foundation. We don't get grants, so it's slim pickings. Our hands are tied for lack of funds.
Well, for what for that alone and what you achieved, that's remarkable. And we've got an anniversary coming up, less than 3 weeks away. Any plans on that?
Yeah, you bet. We're going to be encouraging people all over America and beyond, actually, to screen the new film, which will be available just a week prior to 9/11. It's called 9/11: Anatomy of a Great Deception, and it presents the story of one man who came into his own personal awakening of 9/11 as he was led through the steps sequentially, and his wife thinking he was just nuts. So he did this film, and it was the film that brought her around, saved their marriage, and has become a lightning rod for people to present to other people as a way to cut through, and because it's full of evidence. In fact, there's several clips from our own movie, 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out. So in New York, particularly, we will be screening the film for the premiere there on the 11th of September, which is a Thursday at 2 p.m. And we will be also encouraging our supporters who come to the Ground Zero in New York. Every year, activists come, and we'll be handing out brochures there at Ground Zero and at the museum entry, where we have developed an alternative guide to the museum, what you won't see in the museum, and what the truth about what you do see there. It's really fascinating. There's an article about it on our website, which is AE911truth.org, AE911truth.org. And so we'll also be handing out the new brochure, Good 9/11 Truth, Good for America. We had our pilot project on July 4th and surrounding days. It's a very patriotic brochure, and we believe that it disarms those who believe that we're somehow non-American because we're questioning the official story about 9/11. It has all the evidence in it as well. And in fact, the whole purpose there is to tell people what's the good news about 9/11 Truth. Well, it restores our faith in our government. It restores our economy. It makes our elected representatives accountable to the people for once, and brings truth back to media.
One of our chatters would like you quickly, if you could, Mr. Gage, to elaborate a little bit on Ace Elevator Company. And I have a little information as well.
Yes, well, this is a company that had only one job, and it was to modernize the elevators system in the World Trade Center. This is not a big company, and yet they somehow got this contract when Otis Elevator much larger company, of course, had installed the original equipment in the Twin Towers. So it appears to be a lot of very interesting research that part of which has been done about them and where they came from. And after 9/11, they went out of business.
I'm just going to very quickly read a few sentences from an article pertaining to the situation with Ace Elevator, and maybe we could get you to comment on that. The Fire Department of New York and Port Authority could not cite any successful rescues of anyone trapped or injured in an elevator. After the North Tower was hit, most of the World Trade Center's 83 elevator mechanics gathered in the lobby of the South Tower, but when the second plane hit, they evacuated. In contrast, a passing elevator mechanic from another company, which, by the way, was from Otis, runs into the World Trade Center and dies trying to free trapped passengers. USA Today commented, when the World Trade Center was bombed in 1993, Otis elevator mechanics led to the rescue of 500 people trapped in the elevators. And they also point out that in the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995, elevator mechanics worked closely with firefighters making rescues. And the Port Authority said in their final report that their departure or their leaving was in conflict with the emergency plan. There was no situation in which the mechanics were advised or instructed to leave on their own. So there were 83 elevator technicians there when the second plane hit, and they all left, which was against all of their protocol.
Yeah, I've heard this, and I would like you to send that to me if you wouldn't mind, because there's
I
some
sure
key
will.
information there that I hadn't heard, and some which I have. So this is kind of an indictment, really, against this company and its employees. I mean, I haven't been motivated to do the research, the investigation of them, because that's just not our role. But I'm hoping someone will. It's dangerous work, I imagine.
Well, we got some news stalkers that just might do that.
You know, it is. But when you think about, I mean, obviously, for this one elevator technician to actually run into the building where he was not employed, his company was not contracted, that tells me that is general protocol for an elevator technician. Now, I noticed on this information, some people had made comments that, well, they obviously didn't do anything because to assist, they would have had to go to the top of the building, and there were obviously floors taken out in between. I find that to be an incredibly uneducated response, because there's certainly, even from being able to get access to the elevators, to open the doors when they're not opening automatically, to be able to get into the elevator cars themselves, there are many things that elevator technicians could do without having to get to the top of the building where the cable system and the rest, may originate from.
I would certainly be inclined to agree with you there too. And I do have some other research. If you're going to put somebody on this, you guys should avail yourselves of what we got. I'll give you a link to the files.
Okay. Well, we'll do that. That's what we do. This isn't a show where two guys talk to each other at night. All of our listeners are engaged, and we actually get a lot of our information and leads from listeners. So we have a very active crowd.
Wonderful.
This is more of a movement than a broadcast.
Wonderful.
But we're down to about 3 minutes, Mr. Gage. We appreciate the fact that you're able to spend an hour with us tonight. Is there anything in the next couple minutes that we haven't covered that you think is important to tell our listeners?
Well, you mentioned before about the floors. Now, if the Twin Towers, which each had 110 floors, were a gravitational collapse, we would expect to see 110 floors at the bottom. And we don't see any in the photographs or the videos. There's a two-story pile of core columns and rubble, aluminum cladding, and so forth. Where are the floors? Well, we're talking about 90,000 tons of concrete. 90,000 tons of concrete is pulverized in midair, not down at the bottom because it fell that far and hit crash bang on the ground, but at midair, along with 220 acres of galvanized iron decking, galvanized metal decking. It's just been pulverized along with the concrete, and 30% of that dust is 100 micron particle concrete, powder. We're talking about powder here, pulverized powder. That takes an incredible force. So I'm encouraging everybody to take these facts and learn them and share them. On our website, ae911truth.org, there's a whole bunch of facts. There's some 6-minute videos, some 15-minute videos, some 1-hour videos. There's a lot of ways to learn. There's hundreds of articles. And just send the ae911truth.org link to everybody and participate in the fundraising project for our billboard, which will be right across the street from the New York Times. And quoting David Sanger, who says we found no evidence to suggest that the Twin Towers were brought down by anything other than jet planes. There's lots of evidence, and we list it right on that. We're going to be listing it in September on that massive billboard, something like 40 feet tall, 25 feet wide. Incredible opportunity, once again, for the Rethink911.org campaign.
Well, we thank you very much, as always, for visit number 4, Mr. Gage. We look forward to visit number 5. As Eric said, now with C-SPAN and things moving forward, you may be a little bit more of a rock star, but we know you won't forget us.
Not at all. I look forward to coming back.
All right. Well, thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Bob and Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Visit number 4 with Richard Gage AIA, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. He presents irrefutable facts based on expertise, information, not only from himself, but from others, over 2,200. We'll continue this conversation when we come back. This is News Stalker.
Thank you, Richard.